Hey, everybody, welcome back to Black Lotus, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And today we have a topic that really kind of bugs me, and that is about disinformation and, in the era of disclosure. And the reason it bugs me so much is that, here we're, the government's this, they're pretty much doing a soft disclosure thing right now. But in June, they're supposed to do this big hard disclosure and dump a lot of data on us and all that. And personally, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I happen to agree that it's going to be more along the lines of a soft disclosure. But in the UFO community, one of the things that bugs me so much is that we've got no real solidarity. And this is the time of all times that we need to have some solidarity, in my opinion. Wild, what are your thoughts on that?
So the government has definitely been more vocal recently about UFOs. There's a number of senators, including Marco Rubio. If you go to Mystery Wire here on YouTube, just last week he said that he said there's UFOs in American skies and there's UFOs above military bases, and that we need to identify them. So that's a pretty straightforward statement. Now, he's not really saying that the origin is exotic or anything, but he's just simply saying that there are, vehicles that we need to investigate. But as far as I've been thinking about the military, the U.S. military is who would know about UFOs and craft. Hey, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Trees, I want that hat, buddy. I'm coming for it, so you know. Hey, Damien. Hey, Ralph.
Hello. Hey.
So as I was saying, the military's role, they're probably the ones in the United States who would know the most about UFOs because it's their job. It's basically the military's job to protect us. Their number one responsibility is to protect us. But I don't know, it's not really important for them to tell us the truth, Like I said, their main responsibility is to protect the American citizen. So that doesn't necessarily mean they have to tell us what they know. And then some other points I wanted to make about the military is that, they are a lot more advanced than the regular consumers are. For example, the military had the internet in the 60s, okay? Most Americans didn't experience the internet until like 1998.
Right.
So the government's very advanced. Now, another thing I want to bring up is this program that nobody really talks about. My father told me about it, okay? So there's this craft, okay? It's a little drone, and it's shaped like a mini space shuttle. Okay, the name of the drone it's called the X-37B Orbital Test Vehicle. Now I don't know if you've heard about this, but this is a kind of a secretive vehicle. It's a joint collaboration between NASA, the U.S. Navy, and the Air Force. Now this little vehicle has spent about 8 years in space, and it's spent about 780 days in orbit. Now, it is very secretive. We don't really know why it's being used. They're doing secret experiments, but that's 8 years that it's been flying around. So who knows what they're doing? Maybe this could also account for some of the UFO sightings we've had as well.
Yeah. But I think the thing that really bugs me is, like I said, we need some solidarity in the UFO community. I mean, especially now. And, and suddenly we're getting this influx of people who were once respected members like Nick Pope and Dr. Stephen Greer. And now they're coming out as fraudsters. Nick Pope came out that he wasn't this super high intelligence officer collecting UFO data. He was basically a desk clerk, and then there's Stephen Greer, who I had ultimate respect for. He was the one who headed up the Disclosure Project right before 9/11 happened. And, they got their day in court, and then that got wiped out because of 9/11. I really respected what he was doing, and he made one of the best UFO documentaries, in my opinion, ever. It was called Unacknowledged. And I thought it was just a great doc.
Yeah, that was.
And I really had a lot of respect for this guy. And now he's doing this CE5 thing out here in Nevada. And I think what he's doing is he's hooking in the gullible, for a lot of money, I mean, so why is it that this is occurring during a time when we are supposed to be having, disclosure happening? I think it's darkening the current black eye that we have.
Well, I mean, we're all dealing with egos here in one way or another, and that is going to be apparent until the end of time, so to say. Let's take, for example, I forget her name, but the woman with the last name Usui, who came up with Usui Reiki as the modality and then introduced it to the Western world the way she did. Well, she was accused very early on for charging astronomical amounts of money to go through her courses and her classes and so forth. That being said, it didn't mean that she didn't actually have something. Was it worth that kind of money? That might be up to the individual, but the truth of the matter was she was onto something, and because of that ego really getting in the way, I don't think she reached as many people as she could have in that tenure. But, when you look at someone like Stephen Greer, who is implementing the CE5 thing, you might be thinking, okay, this just is another avenue for him to make money. I understand it takes, some finances to procure a space out where he goes, perhaps, refreshments and, lodging, whatever the case may be that goes into it. I know that it doesn't reach the full price of what he's asking for, although I understand that it is an orchestrated event. Still, I mean, I don't know, because I believe that the CE5 as it is, there is something there, but I don't think that it is for everybody at this point in time.
Yeah. And I think that you mentioned that it's an orchestrated event. I've heard that he's dropping flares from like Cessna airplanes. And what do you know about that? I mean, I've just heard about this.
I've heard the same thing, and I don't have any proof either way because I wasn't there myself and haven't attended one of these. But I mean, it would go without saying that putting an effort into something like that to deceive groups of people, not only once, twice, but on a consistent basis here, I think somebody would eventually really highlight this and bring it to, full speed. But who knows? I mean, time will tell if that's the kind of thing he's doing. But again, I don't know Dr. Stephen Greer myself. I've watched many different presentations in which he's, given his thoughts and opinions about what's going on and what we might have. And I still believe that in some of what he's saying is absolutely true. It's just a matter of pulling that ego filter out of some of the information, as you would do for anybody.
Right. And I just kind of wonder if it's, because he was all over the place for a while. And then I wonder if he just wasn't, he thought, I'm not making any money on this. I wonder, there's got to be a way I can make some money. I mean, I'm of the opinion, always follow the money, because it always comes down to greed, in my opinion, but
more often than not. But then you have someone like Deepak Chopra, who offers his services in many different charitable ways wherein he's not getting paid and he's not giving his kids X amount of money because he wants them to learn. There are some grounded people in our field, but by and large, you are finding some of these odd discrepancies when it comes to certain public figures such as Stephen Greer or Nick Pope or Emery Smith, for God's sake. You could name any of these guys and there's some kind of controversy around what they're doing.
I also think that the lack of solidarity, I think ufology is still, honestly, it's like the Wild West. There really is no structure to it. If you look at like science in general, you look at gardening, the aquarium industry. I mean, just take any subset of human activity. There's a structure that's built. There's that just doesn't exist with ufology. It's still the Wild West. Everybody's out for their own. So people have tried to build some structure, like MUFON, NICAP. Some of these organizations have tried to build some kind of structure, but unfortunately, I don't think anybody succeeded in building that community and that structure. That still needs to happen, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Wild Trees. And I think, in respect to a group like MUFON, again, we see that ego infiltrated at many different points in time. I mean, I think they were started in, was it 1968, somewhere around there. So they were one of the first groups to really decide that they wanted to get organized and present things in this way. I think it was a great intention. Again, it's people who are sort of spoiling things along the way. And because we don't have any real solidarity in respect to the field, like you're saying here, I think we have a lot of room to mature and grow and become more of a cohesive unit in respect to ufology.
Very much so.
Even in other paranormal investigative studies, Like for instance, people who are paranormal investigators, they go into, supposed haunted houses and stuff like that. You don't find it's not as diverse as it is with the UFO community, and like even the cryptid investigators, they're not as diverse necessarily. I mean, there's some diversity there, between flesh and blood and interdimensional Sasquatches. But really, there's not a lot of diversity there. But in the UFO community, I mean, and I think it always has been, but it's gotten worse lately. So talk to us about the seeming hate for Jeremy Corbell. What's the reason behind that? I understand with that Bob Lazar movie, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. I get that he was like being over emotional in that, but that's filmmaking, but I don't really understand why he's hated as much as he is.
Let me go on the record. I want to go on the record right now. Jeremy, if you're listening, I respect you. No bad feelings for Jeremy. I like what you're doing. Now, I think Jeremy has he's very excitable, his personality, the way he talks, but I mean, that's good for a showman. I don't think he's disingenuous. I don't think he's dishonest. I think he's doing good work. But honestly, I think it's his personality. I think his personality, the amount of energy he has, is what maybe turns people off. That's my opinion.
Well, and he and George Knapp just released this thing that apparently the Pentagon had leaked this video of that pyramid UFO. And now they're coming out and saying, George Knapp is on 8 News Now here in Las Vegas, and he does his mystery wire thing. And evidently, when they first released this video, they said it was leaked by the Pentagon, but the reporter on the news put a disclaimer up before this, and they said that the Pentagon had not gotten back to them. They had not confirmed that it was leaked. And then it came out that George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell are actually the ones who released this video. Now, that's not saying that the whole thing is a hoax, but it's kind of disinformation. It's claiming that the government has knowledge of this, and apparently they didn't.
That's curious. Yeah, that's curious that Knapp, he knew somebody on the inside. We don't know much more about where he got it or the source. It just happened to be somebody reached out to him, and perhaps Jeremy as well. But I think it was definitely George Knapp to give him this bit of footage and information. So again, I mean, most of the sources are nebulous, even when they should have some sort of trace. I mean, it came from us as human beings, or I got this information from so and so. It's so hard in this field because there are places that you still have to remain underneath the shroud, whether it be academia or somebody's worried about the reputation, reprisal, and so forth for just sharing the opinion. We still have to deal with that. So, I mean, I'm struggling to come up with a really good analogy here, but it is very difficult what we have in front of us in the way of, sort of piecing together what seems legit and then actually coming back and questioning that legitimacy after all the pieces are put together, seeing in front of you what you think is something that you recognize, and then realizing that all these pieces are from different sourses that haven't been verified. It's just a mess of a field. I mean, I love it, but it's a mess.
I do have a good analogy. I have a good analogy, DarkHour. I think what you were trying to say, like, okay, in science, this is what happens. If somebody has something really cool to share, like a cool video or a cool picture, they will not just release a picture in the world and a couple of lines. They'll give you a lot of context. They'll release the picture, they'll release the video, but then they'll write a formal paper with an introduction, a methods, works cited. It's a lot of context, and so that makes it more valuable. Now, if I could give some feedback, some constructive criticism to Jeremy Corbell, to Lou Elizondo, all these people releasing videos. We really need more context, perhaps a formal paper with the videos, because the videos are neat. They're neat, but we really need more information. We need more data and more just details to go with the videos and pictures. I think that would help.
Yeah. Regan Habit just asked, why are they calling it a pyramid and not a triangle? I think I have an answer for that, Regan. Regan, by the way, how's it going? Nice to see you. But if you watch the video at length, you'll see the thing flashing, and then you'll see it move a little bit. And when it moves, it almost does look like a pyramid rather than just a triangle. But I mean, I think that if this footage is legit, and I think it is, it's some of the best footage we've ever had, I think.
I would agree with that. You can see the dimension, right, Ralph?
Yeah, definitely. Not only that, it's by a reliable source. It's not just by somebody on the ground, some everyday citizen, but I mean, it's coming from a good place.
Yeah, they're saying it came from a naval ship, but that hasn't been verified yet. You know, I mean, so really, we don't know where it came from yet, and you know, and who, like Michael was saying, you know, we don't know who provided the video to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. So yeah, but yeah, I do think that it's probably one of the better footages I've ever seen, anyway.
And it's getting a lot of mainstream attention right now. I believe Corbell was on with Tucker Carlson either right now or a little earlier there. Sorry, maybe an hour ago. He was talking to Tucker Carlson about this. So yeah, it's gaining some tread.
What was he saying about that?
Honestly, I didn't get a chance to sit and watch.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I actually received a text with a bunch of photos showing that he was on there when I was going to go onto the show within 10 minutes. So it's something I'll have to watch afterwards, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying something, Wild Trees?
Yeah, my hope is that these videos will continue to come out, and they'll get better, and we'll get more context and more context. So I think it's good that they're coming out, but I hope that they evolve. The videos themselves evolve, they get better. So I don't think they're bad. I'm not against these videos, and I'm not against. No, I'm not either. But you know, I think what this soft disclosure is doing, without verifying sources, is that it's just attracting more and more debunkers. I'm not talking about skeptics. I'm not talking about people who remain objective, but people who are just plain out debunkers. It's like in the UFO community, if you screw up once, you're done. You know, I mean, and Michael, you can vouch for this because you're part of Third Phase of Moon, which has been slammed repeatedly for something that they did 4 years ago. You know, I mean, and they've since ever since then they haven't put up anything that's bad since. I mean, can you explain a little bit more about that? I mean, what happened?
Sure. Essentially, what happened was in the beginning, if you will, or at least around that time period, they were receiving certain submissions and they weren't, at least from what I understand, being as thorough with perhaps what they were looking at. If it looked good, it might have gone up. And then perhaps the analysis would occur afterwards. So they decided at one point, this is not the way to do things. And they went back into their archives and removed anything that had any inkling of question in respect to the integrity of the video itself, whether this is CGI or something's manipulated. They removed all of that and moved forward. Again, like you mentioned, this was about 4 or 5 years ago now. They moved forward with that particular model in mind, bringing the best in UFO sightings. And listen, you know what? I don't blame them for doing something like that. Like Wild Trees here is saying, it is the Wild West when it comes to ufology. And much earlier on, maybe 10, 20 years ago, it was that much more so the Wild West. And, you know, people were still finding their place. And perhaps when they looked at these videos, they said, wow, well, this looks interesting. Let's post it and talk about it. And then, of course, as ufology began to grow and there was a lot more ability to analyze certain things and we realized what was capable with certain technology, perhaps that's when they said, okay, well, now we can analyze, you know, things a little bit more in depth and we don't have to bother with some things that are really questionable. You know, I'm not necessarily speaking for them. This is just what I understand in respect to their outfit and what they've done.
Right. But like I said, I mean, once you screw up once in the UFO community, you're branded with the scarlet letter, you know, I mean, and you are forever. I mean, I see people today that talk about third phase of moon and about how untrustworthy they are, and I think that they. Speaking of integrity, I think it speaks for their integrity that they removed those videos.
Right,
I mean, and went forward with a better plan. And so I don't understand why people are just constantly poo-pooing.
They are stuck in the past. That's what it is. They're not watching anything current. They're going on hearsay, or they're going on what happened, if they were even a part of it back then and actually saw it firsthand. Most of them haven't. They're just hearing things. And again, it's all referencing this block of time that's already been passed and rectified as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that's what's happening. Yeah.
And they're just parroting other people, without really doing any investigation on their own, which is not surprising because that's what people do,
Oh, yeah.
You got to think about too, though. Right now, there's more disinformation coming around than there was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we didn't have the internet like we do now, and don't have all these fake CGI videos going around and all these rumors going around that we wouldn't have had 20 years ago.
Yeah,
no, you gotta swallow more salt before you put anything else on your palate these days.
Right.
That's just kind of just the nature of it, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you like to discover. Sometimes doing that, you find a little bit more truth.
Yeah. Do you guys think that the government is releasing more disinformation because of this so-called disclosure that we're getting? I mean, I think of the movie Mirage Men about Richard Doty. And, I don't blame Richard Doty necessarily, although he's kind of the pariah in the UFO community. I just think that the guy was just doing his job. It was the upper echelon that was controlling what he was doing. But do you think that this disinformation is coming directly from the government, and rather than say hoaxers?
Yeah, I think that's very possible. I think that there are definitely two sides, if you want to break it down in respect to duality and polarity. One side who wants us to know certain things, maybe not all of it, but they want to give us something. And there's another side who is probably in complete opposition to that, keeping with the old world way of, people in fear and control and so forth. I'm seeing on a larger scale this grand split in terms of interest and what they're releasing to us and so forth, not just in the world of ufology, but all across politics and other forums as well. So, I mean, yes, to answer your question, I think that there is probably a bit of that. It's just a matter of wading through the mire of what's being presented to us. And again, pulling out those pieces that seem legitimate enough to then conduct the further research into it.
Yeah. I think that this disclosure thing, I don't think that they're ever going to disclose that they've been working with aliens. They're going to disclose that, yes, we have been keeping an eye on these things and we don't know what they are and blah, 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 blah. But I don't think they're ever going to disclose that they've been working with aliens because that puts them in a really bad light. You know what I mean? But I wonder how that ties in with this disinformation stuff that's out there. And so that they could say, well, see, we didn't really work with the aliens, or see, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think that it very possibly could have a lot to do with that.
One thing I was considering about disclosure, so let's just assume that the government, certain branches of the military know about advanced technologies, the weird stuff, exotic things. I was thinking about how if they wanted to tell us, it's kind of like teaching someone calculus. Calculus is very complicated. There's a lot to know. It's a lot to take in. So if you're going to teach someone calculus, you can't start off with calculus. You can't start off with trigonometry. You can't even start off with algebra. You got to start off with addition and subtraction. You got to be like, look, let's count to 10, and you got to build your way up there. So if they were going to share some information, I understand how they got to take baby steps, very small baby steps, because, I mean, the vast majority of people can't take all that information at once.
Yes, I think if they did actually disclose something that, like you said, without going slow like that, it'll cause a panic.
Yeah.
Well,
True.
I mean, look at what we just went through this last year. Everybody's lives were uprooted individually in one way or another. We've lost loved ones. We've watched people, in the neighborhood that, in our opinion, went earlier than they probably should have because of what was happening. And yet we're still very resilient. And there are many of us who are very strong and standing on our feet, adapting to the situations as they come, because that's just what's necessary. I think that there's a big misunderstanding in our pliability and our flexibility to, again, adapt and be okay with that as long as we get through the initial transposition of change, if you will. So I don't know.
Well,
I don't think it'll be. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think it could be just a matter of distraction?
In certain circumstances, absolutely. And again, that comes back to the different groups having different intentions. And of course, I'm sure that there's a lot of designed direction on both ends of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Even something as simple as subliminal advertising, But go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, one thing that I know for sure, because it's come out already, and I just think it's true, is that the different branches of the government, they're not all on the same page. They all have different agendas, and they all believe different things should be said and different things shouldn't be said. So we have to keep that into consideration. Like, even if you listen to Lou Elizondo, who worked for the Pentagon, the ATIP program, he said that certain people in the Pentagon, they truly believe that this UFO stuff should not be disclosed because they believed it was demonic. So their own personal beliefs were religious. So even within one department, you have people with different motivations. So it's hard to get a straight message from our government.
Well, that's curious.
There's
too.
A bunch of different agendas.
It's easy for people to look at this phenomenon and say there are people who are driving this ship, and that's who's going to know what needs to be known. But in fact, we're actually working with many different tiers of organizations and perhaps governmental factions that, again, they're all human. At the very end of the day, as far as I know, we are all human beings having this experience, and perhaps they have to make choices on a different level than you and I might, but they're not going to escape ego. They're not going to escape belief systems. They're not going to escape their own fears. It's just as grounded as that. In the end, we are working with fallible entities, which is us.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. This whole thing is just, in my opinion, is kind of getting out of hand at this point. I mean, again, we're getting to a point where we're supposed to have disclosure, and we get it, and people immediately debunk it. And it's just like, like I said, we need some solidarity in this community. We really do. I mean, and I'm not saying we should swallow everything hook, line, and sinker, but at least, as I always say, remain objective, question everything, I mean, even things that you want to believe in, you want to believe this is real, but really question it and think for yourself.
I think one of the
question the source also.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I think one of the issues here is that when you're growing up and let's say you went to the dentist or something and your mother's driving you home, she says, "Hey, let's stop at the ice cream store. I'm going to get you an ice cream. You did such a great job today." So, she goes and she buys the ice cream. She gives it to you and you absolutely love it. You knew what the intention was. You know why you're getting this ice cream. Okay. It was something that you did, or there was some sort of, reward for some activity or behavior within what the government's giving us. We don't really know what their true intention is. Are they really showing this so that we have own personal knowledge and conviction? Or are they planning to give us this knowledge so that they can implement something that would have to have that precursor in order to enact it? What is the actual intention, and how far are they going to reach in respect to what they're giving us? Are they only going to give us something that we can look at and say, okay, that's technology we don't know anything about, it's unfamiliar, but hey, we both agree it exists? Or are they going to hand this photo and say, that's the TR-3B, we've been working on it for 75 years and blah blah blah? The extent of what they're actually going to give us and the intention behind it is so hazy. It's hard to really trust what they're giving us, and I think that's a lot of the reason that people are trying to debunk these videos right out the door.
Yeah. Just as a side note, you were talking about the TR3B. I was telling Ralph the other day, I was driving here in Vegas, and in front of me was one of those new Corvette ZIO, I think it is. It's called. I mean, they're just some little sports cars, and they kind of look like a triangle. And this Corvette was black, and the license plate said TR3B on it, and it had a small little alien head bumper sticker next to it. I just thought that was pretty funny.
That's awesome. It's really awesome.
But yeah, anyway, so yeah, again, I don't know, and I don't think anybody else knows what's going on here. I mean, it's all speculation as far as the disinformation and the disclosure. I mean, we don't know what we're going to get in June. We have no idea. I think we're all kind of crossing our fingers that we're going to get something substantial, but I don't think we are. I really don't.
It'll just be another leg. Go ahead.
Misty COC Dragon says that as much as I want it to happen, I doubt they will ever give us the full truth. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with her. There's no way they're going to give us the whole truth. Even if they do disclosure, it'll be redacted as so much that we won't be able to see anything.
Yeah, as usual.
Because of, of course, the security of the nation.
Mm.
They're under no obligation to really divulge anything to us. And I'm very surprised even now to see what Trump had put into action on the end of that bill, where we're now in 180 days to some sort of disclosure. Again, I think the word disclosure is a misnomer. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to find that out. But that's what people are riding on right now, that energy and that potential for things to go on. Now, very quickly, I wanted to ask, not to get off topic here, Wild Trees. This has got to be the longest car ride I've ever seen. Where are you going, man? I mean, I like the backdrop, don't get me wrong, but where are you headed?
Yeah, I'm driving like 2 hours
Oh, wow.
from one city in southern Texas to the other. I was doing just a weekend project. I usually do it on Saturdays, but it was raining, so I'm doing it today. I didn't want to miss the show. I'm not driving, by the way. So
No, I can see you're on the right side there. No, I was just curious, man.
Yeah.
Very good, mate.
So, I think we're going to probably wrap it up here. This is going to be a quick show because, again, it's like I said, I mean, there's only so much you can talk about when you don't have the information, I mean, and as far as, this disclosure thing that Trump put into that bill, I've said it before and I'll always say it again. Presidents only have so much power. I mean, they're in a temporary position. They're not in the need to know where it comes to UFOs and that kind of stuff. And I think that's why most presidents, since probably Truman, have not really talked about UFOs. And when they did, it was kind of like vague, I mean, because I just don't think that they have that kind of information, and they certainly don't have the kind of power. They don't wield the kind of power to make agencies like the military industrial agency to disclose what they know about, say, UFOs. I mean, I just don't think that they have that kind of power. I mean, regardless of what people think about Trump, he certainly didn't have that kind of power.
What happens here too is that occasionally when you hold on to a question for too long, you forget what you were going to say. It'll come back to me. It'll come back. I know we're at here, but what I wanted to say was it's always possible that whatever the government gives us in way of this disclosure, they might actually be giving a good chunk of what they have, because the majority of what we know as a collective sits with privatized businesses. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they, again, as we've discussed, are under no obligation to share what they have with anybody. So, I mean, they might show us, the government might show us a refrigerator while, the privatized company has, the BMWs that are jacked up and automated to drive. So, there's a lot of slippery slopes here that we really got to keep our eyes open for any cracks between where they might be slipping certain things in. We really got to pay super attention, until, maybe up until the point where this 180 days is exhausted. But I would recommend we're going to be looking at these things for much longer to come.
Right. I really doubt that, when it gets to the date that they're going to come out with an alien and show it on TV and go, yeah, see, we know these people.
Yeah, not likely.
Dressed like Elvis,
Yeah. But, you were talking about privatized businesses. I mean, look at the big contract that SpaceX just landed with NASA to take astronauts to the moon. They are not under government obligation to reveal anything that they're doing that NASA's not. So apparently NASA thought, well, you know what? They probably have a better system than we do. And again, they don't have to answer to government regulations, and that kind of stuff. And so I'm sure that that's why they landed that contract.
See, to me, this is also the Wild West, the space exploration stuff. I mean, if you have the ability to get out there, you could get out there. If any one of us had a spaceship that would fit the four of us in, I could say, hey, come over next Saturday. We're going to go take a quick trip up to the moon, and we'll be back by about Monday afternoon. And we could do it legally, as far as I know. There's no recourse that anyone would take upon you for, making that exploration. It's incredible. And watch what happens as people attempt to bring in some sort of limitation when it comes to that. I know that nobody can own space. I mean, that's something that's been discussed, but we've also seen some of these sort of laws and ideas overturned as certain parties have become interested in particular things and circumstances, let alone demographically looking into space. So, I mean, for all we know, some of these countries already do lay claim. Maybe Russia owns Mars, maybe China owns the moon. And perhaps on that level, there isn't the same sort of conflict that we have, or at least that we see viscerally between people. And there's some other form of existence in the way of mentality and thinking, I guess. I mean, it's all speculation, like you say, Damien. It really is.
Yeah, I saw something recently. Somebody in one of the Facebook groups posted a question and said, what do you think will happen when the aliens do make themselves known? And my first response was, well, it's pretty bold to think that they haven't already done so. And secondly, I think that if they haven't and they make themselves publicly known, I don't think that I'm of the opinion that society couldn't handle it. I mean, I used to have more faith in society, but then COVID happened, and it just, everybody went nuts.
Let me ask you guys, all three of you here, out of curiosity, if an alien species or extraterrestrial species was convicted enough that they wanted to reveal themselves, okay, do you think that somewhere in their thought in doing this, that they would have a certain responsibility in doing this because they have an idea that we might view them a certain way, or that they might be one of the first to really open up this door on such a wide level where it becomes a global phenomenon? Do you think that the extraterrestrials would feel that sort of responsibility or something along those lines?
I think, personally, that the extraterrestrials know what we're like. They know that we're a warlike species, and they see how we react to one another. Anybody who's different, we're immediately suspect about them. I mean, immediately we want to conquer them. I mean, look at the racism that goes on, in this country and throughout the world, I mean, even you can even bring this down to a difference of opinion about, where it comes to like holy wars and that sort of thing. And so I think that they see this and they go, nah, they're not ready for us. Because we don't want to be treated. Because I mean, I personally know some people who, if they saw a UFO in the sky, would take a shotgun to it. You know what I mean? Because anything that people just don't understand, they immediately retaliate against, and we're a violent species. We really are. So I don't think that the aliens would be under any obligation to reveal anything.
See, we could fix that, though, as human beings and those who are in power. We could fix a level of that ignorance that people would necessarily might approach an event like that, just by divulging certain things. Hey, we know that these species are benevolent, or we've done this XYZ with them before, so we have a history. Oh, by the way, we didn't tell you, you guys actually share DNA, so they're sort of like long lost parentages, if you will. So if they were to give us something to prime us in a very compassionate way, I think you would see at least 70% of what could happen completely truncated in respect to that event, because, you know, the worst thing you can do to somebody is surprise them with something like that. Surprise them with a paradigm shift. Yeah.
Do you think they're really going to believe the government, whatever they say anyway?
It depends on how things are presented. Now, if somebody came out, let's say our president today got on the stand and said, hey, listen, want to talk to you guys. What I'm going to tell you might be a little unbelievable, but now is time to bring this out, because we're all going to be moving a different direction as soon as I'm done on this podium tonight. When you prime people the right way, you're going to put that into their ears. You're going to give them a moment to, again, adapt and start to feel out what's coming next and how they sit in that themselves, because they are part of this paradigm, whether we want to be or not. So yes, I do think that if there is a little bit of soft priming, but more direct, okay, rather than just through media or music or whatever it is that we're seeing in the way of soft disclosure, something more direct, it would put people's mind at ease if something like that was coming for us.
To answer your question, I was thinking about this recently. Okay, if there are other intelligences on this planet and they're more advanced than humans, they're be they interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial, crypto-terrestrial, extraterrestrial, whatever they are, I have a feeling there's different groups, but I have a feeling that the vast majority of them, the relationship they have with us is like, let's say you're working outside and a little ant crawls on your pinky finger, okay? That's the relationship they have with us, you know? They are the person and we are the ants. So if we see an ant on our pinky finger, we have so much more power over it. We could choose to kill it without even thinking about it. We could choose to put it down on the ground, but we're on such a different level than the ants. And I have a feeling that if there are intelligences, that's the kind of relationship there is between us and them. That's how big the gulf is between us.
Right. And the best the ant could do would be bite you. And that would be tantamount to us firing a gun at these things, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, so, and if, you know, we always talk about humanitarianism, you know, and how we should treat animals and that kind of thing. And so maybe they are of a higher intelligence insofar as that they haven't wiped us out yet. And it's probably because they have some sort of compassion for us, because we are a developing species.
Keyword, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's, you know, it probably has happened in the past, and it did not necessarily as if they walked into the ant farm and then just kicked the thing over, but there was probably some certain intention in whatever conflict we've had with extraterrestrials in our history. But yeah, I mean, it's very possible, guys.
You know, and you know, I was talking about that question that was posed at one of the groups, and also there's a matter of where they land. You know, I mean, if it happened in America, I could see a certain scenario happening. If it happened in Russia, I could see a totally different scenario happening. Absolutely. You know, so I, you know, it really depends on, you know, where they decide to disclose themselves.
Well, one of the most famous disclosure events by an actual extraterrestrial where they actually spoke to us was in Zimbabwe, in Africa, and they chose to speak with children. So they directly showed themselves to children, and they communicated telepathically, but they did. They chose to speak with children, which is very interesting. And was
this back in the 50s?
The Zimbabwe
was it later?
Zimbabwe,
I remember this, but
the 90s, I think.
Was it the 90s? Okay, so it was much later. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just think it's interesting. So there have been times when these grays have talked to people, but they chose to talk to children, and the message they gave them telepathically was that we're using technology incorrectly, and that the planet is going to become like uninhabitable, you know? So,
well, and that makes a lot of sense that they would do that, because they have yet to develop their own opinions about things necessarily, you know what I mean? And so they're not stuck in their old ways. Like for instance, you know, while we were talking about how scientists are stuck in their own ways, and that's why they don't want to investigate the paranormal very much, you know? And those who do are immediately finding themselves without a job, you know? So, but yeah, I mean, I think that that's exactly why they would speak with children, is because they have relatively open minds.
And they're also the future of this planet. So if, talking to somebody who is an adult and already doing the wrong thing, mean, maybe these guys are thinking ahead of it, and I'm sure that there was a reason they picked those children to divulge something like this. Because, I mean, most kids, even those I'm sure in different countries, have their mind on play rather than, high technology or what we're doing otherwise. I mean, this is Zimbabwe, where technology in certain respects is limited, or at least I'm sure it was back in the 90s. So, yeah, this is a very curious case. I have looked at it quite a few times, and every time I keep coming up with the same conclusion that I believe that actually occurred. And I would just like to know more about where those kids are today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, but anyway, so what do you say we get out of here for the night? Viewers, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sorry it was kind of a quick video tonight, but again, I mean, there's only so much you can do when you're speculating on things where you don't have much information,
Right.
I mean, so,
Yeah.
but I did enjoy talking to you guys about this tonight, and
Me too.
honestly, especially you, Michael, because you're involved with third phase of moon, which has been, called out for disinformation all the time, even though they're not doing that anymore. And I appreciate you explaining that whole thing to me, because I didn't really understand why people were continuing to bash third phase of moon when they're obviously not doing that kind of stuff anymore. I mean, it's been years and years. So I appreciate you doing that, man.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to clarify, because it is sort of a topic of interest lately. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Viewers, again, don't forget to like and subscribe to us. We love to see the thumbs up. And also check out our podcast that we do over at PodBean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music, and I think Stitcher too. And it's called Paranormal News Network, and I dropped a link for that in the description. So
great interviews, by the way. Go and check that out, guys. Awesome.
Hey, man, thanks. I appreciate that.
No, you're welcome.
Viewers, until next time, keep thinking and question everything.